I think that was excellent. You know, one of the things I want to ask you, and I know a lot of people who know you would probably say Coach Miller looks like it's so easy for him. You know, he could have a big gaping hole in his head and he won't complain about it, you know. But, you know, can you tell us some of the stories that involve maybe some of the discomforts that you went through? A lot of people know you went from track coach uh, to another coach, to an athletic director, to Nike, to the Professional Bowlers Tour, to, you know, was there any discomfort you can share with us that would encourage us that, you know, you're human and we'll go through the same thing?
Well, yeah, I think that first of all, a lot of discomfort. I think that when you say, Coach Miller can, it looks like it's so easy. That's a practice trait. I mean, it looks easy because I make it look easy, but it doesn't adequately characterize how I felt. That day when Suzanne said you could become the director of athletics, I thought that she was, and she would tell you, I thought she was completely out of her mind. I really said to her, what are you talking about? I'm a coach. So when I threw my name in the hat for becoming director of athletics, I was waiting for the laugh, or I was waiting for someone to say, what are you talking about? You have no administrative background. You have none of the skill sets that we look for in terms of negotiation, handling budgets, et cetera, et cetera. But the truth is I did have those skills. I may not have had them at the level that made the transition easy, but I had those skills, and I had to call up those skills while I was very uncomfortable. Then when I became director of athletics, it opened doors for me that I never thought were possible. Now I'm dealing with other directors of athletics who had other skill sets. They came from the banking industry. They didn't always come from sports. They came from, being a CPA. They came from being an executive at big programs, big business programs. So I learned from them. And then opportunities arose for me to take on more administrative, responsibilities, more public speaking, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't know people were interested in what I had to say. I never really knew. I mean, yes, it seems silly, but I didn't know they had any interest in it. I remember going to a school in the East, and those of you that are watching this can look up the school because it's a kind of an interesting name. It was Petty School, Peddie. Petty School was a private school that you went to if you were trying to get into an Ivy League school. You frequently had to go to a prep school first, and Petty was a prep school. So I was asked to come there to give a presentation, and the presentation was on the pole vault, but the presentation was really steeped in biomechanics. It was really a much higher level conversation about what goes on in the pole vault, how you transfer speed into the pole, how the pole transfers energy back to you, what happens in that transition. I dealt with what people know as a metronome. A metronome is that little thing you have on a piano which goes back and forth, back and forth. The metronome plays a part in pole vaulting, et cetera. And before I got on the stage to begin to speak, I realized that Petty was this prep school. I just assumed they all knew all of this. So when I got up on the stage, I was a little petrified because I said, gosh, what if all these things that I'm going to talk about are things that they know and it's incredibly boring? So I absolutely felt like I misjudged my skill set. And I realized after a period of time that they had never heard any of these things. And it gave me a lot of confidence. But I started out, my armpits probably were down to my waist because I was sweating like a dog. My hands were wet. But nobody knew that because my exterior looked comfortable, right? I remember being interviewed by Leslie Stahl on 2020. And Leslie Stahl was doing a story. It was kind of a expose of coaches getting money and the athletes not getting money. And I was at Nike, and obviously we had hundreds, thousands of athletes. And she was chastising me about the fact that we didn't care about the athletes all we cared about was money. Well, as it turned out, CBS, which I think was the carrier that she was on, had just signed a $2 billion deal, $2 billion with a B deal with the Final Four. So it was clear that the very station that she was working for was much more involved in athletes, taking advantage of athletes, making money for the schools, and the athletes were not making any money other than their scholarships. But when I sat down with her, I don't know if you've ever seen an interview on TV, but you're sitting, your knees are almost touching. There's lights everywhere. And she's trying to make you say something you don't want to say. She keeps beating you up with this, but how can you feel good about yourself? You guys take advantage of these athletes, et cetera, et cetera. And Mike Krzyzewski and Dean Smith at Duke and at North Carolina had just signed a Nike contract, and she was after them. She wanted to know why you pay this coach $1 million and pay the athletes nothing. So when we started that conversation, I had done a lot of work at Nike on interviewing. They gave me school lessons about interviewing, where to put your hands, how to look in the camera, what not to do. Don't shake your head yes unless you're, the truth is never shake your head yes, because what they would do is ask a question, show your head shaking yes, but that's not the answer to the question they asked you. But on TV, nobody knows that. So as a result, what occurs is that you may be making a point and you're using your hands to be expressive. They take your hands being expressive and put it on another question. So you have to keep your hands still. You have to stay still. And I was nervous as hell going on that set. I mean, really nervous. Then when we started the bowling issue, and I know a little bit of this is out of context and kind of, back and forth. I had never been involved in bowling. And we had all these guys that were dependent on us running a good business so they would make money, make them sporting people, make them, give them an opportunity to be as good as their peers, meaning peers in other sports. And I had to get up in front of all these guys and explain what we were trying to do. And I guarantee you, there wasn't 10 people in that room that liked me, and even less after I got done speaking. So at the end of the day, here I was, the CEO of professional bowlers, and these guys, were saying to themselves, what are you going to bring us? Who do you think you are? Et cetera, et cetera. So I've been in a number of situations that have made me very nervous and very, very uptight. But there's that old saying, don't let them see you sweat. I would maintain composure. And part of my skill set was offense as opposed to defense. So I would say things before I would be asked a certain question to defray some of that potential blowback. So it's a skill. It's something you learn over a period of time. So I may have looked comfortable, but I wasn't comfortable. I mean, we go to the national meet. Were we the best team? Sure. Now, in retrospect, it's easy to say that. But at the time going there, it wasn't as if we sat down and said, we're the best team in the country, and no matter what happens, we're going to win. What we said was, if we do everything we can do, if everybody comes through and becomes everything we want to be and you want to be, we can win. And of course, we did. We won repeatedly. But it took a while to get people to believe in themselves. And it took a while to make sure you're saying the right thing. And all of those skills are transferable in any number of jobs. Didn't have to be a coach. I could have been a team leader in a thought group, in a strategy group for a business. You could have been, the administrator, dean of boys, dean of girls at a school, with this transferable skill set. So, yeah, I think when I got married in 1969, I was nervous. Had my first, Suzanne had her first baby. I was nervous. I mean, those things are not easy. And when I've been chastised by parents, or I have somebody, say that he's not the person you think he is, or somebody does something, I'm glad I didn't grow up in an age that was as socially connected as it is now. I probably would have taken some real hits on social media, but I didn't because it wasn't around at that time, or it wasn't as profound as it is. So, yeah, I get plenty nervous, but I've worked at keeping myself in check and making it look easy, because the easier I made it look, the harder it was for somebody to make me look bad.
I love these stories, and some of the things you taught a group of 100 people who we all know, but learning how to actually think better than you actually are was something that I think you trained a lot of people, and I'm sure you carried that on to, professional bowlers tour, Nike, and even with Andre and Stephanie's, group. But you said it takes some time to learn it. It's a trained behavior. You know, don't let them see you sweat. I don't think I can remember a time that you were nervous. I'd have to think really deep, but it's an acquired skill, sounds like. And, I think a lot of people are going to be motivated when they hear, well, Coach Miller had, struggles. He was nervous, because you've done a good job of kind of like not letting people see you sweat.
Well,
So,
the reality is interesting. You know, um, it gets harder, not easier. So when people think that I've kind of gone through life and it's been kind of a cakewalk, and there's some luck and some skill involved, being in the right place at the right time, what they don't really understand, and I'll give you a great example. It really, a truly great example. You know, all the years that I was at Cal Poly, the 5 years I was there, and years before that, I was in a situation where lots of young people, and some people my age and some older, would come to me for advice. They would come to me to talk to me about, some of the problems they're having, some of the difficulties, et cetera, et cetera. Well, and I appreciated that, and I liked that. It was something I liked to do, and it was something that I felt was beneficial to people most of the time. All right, but who do I talk to? So now all of a sudden, I'm alone, and everybody thinks it's just a cakewalk, and I'm in the rooms helping people make decisions, life decisions, and I have nobody to talk to. I have nobody I can go to talk to. So what do? So I end up being alone, and I end up without that mentor and without someone who has had experiences way beyond me. Or if they have had experiences beyond me and I talk to them, I don't have the connection with them that those athletes or those people had with me. So you're alone. All right. So what ends up happening is, it's very interesting. What ends up happening is that athletes that you trained with and were with, and other people, think highly of my skills, and they dismiss my feelings. Now, I don't mean to say that they're mad or mean, but when I got hurt playing football, I was put in the hospital in Chicago. And I had an extensive surgery, a very, very big surgery, which was not orthoscopic. It was open the leg up and you got a cast on, and you got that cast for 4 months or 3 months. After a while, you're taking a hanger and putting it down that cast and trying to scratch your leg. You're sweating. The leg is atrophying. When I saw my leg and they took the cast off, it looked like my arm. It did not look like a leg. It's so thin, and I knew my career as an athlete was over, and I wondered what I was going to do. Okay, so I'm in a room in the hospital with a young man, and you have to remember this was in the 60s, so it wasn't as sophisticated as it is now, because now they have different floors for different diseases or different places for different kinds of circumstances. So the young man that was in the room was a little bit older than me. I was 21, and I'm going to guess he was 22 or 23, and he had leukemia. And after about a week, he passed away. So now he's in my room, and he passes away. I can't say we became friends because we really didn't talk that much. And I was always aggravated. I was always unhappy and mad about something. So a couple of days after he passed away, I was not a very good patient. I was demanding. I was miserable. I was unhappy. I thought what happened to me was incredibly unfair, and I was not going to be the person I had planned to be. I was not going to be a professional athlete. I was not. I really didn't know what it meant, but it didn't. It certainly meant that I was not going to be what I had planned to be. It certainly meant that things were different. And I don't know that I said, how am I going to make money? But I did say, how am I going to go on living? Now, I never thought about suicide, but I did think that it was incredibly unfair that I got hurt. Well, after a couple of days of being a bad patient, I had a nurse come in and yell at me and say to me, how could you be like that when the person next to you in the bed passed away? And I said, I really don't care about him. I don't care that he passed away. What I care about is I'm hurt. What I care about is my life has changed. He's gone. And it was an insensitive thing to say. It was terribly, terribly short-sighted. But at the time, that's how I felt. Now, when I got out of the hospital and I had begun to make my career, I was in college and was a good student and, played football, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when I went back to school, I had one semester left. When I went back to school, I had a number of people come up to me and say, oh, Craig, Steve Miller, he's going to get over this. He's going to handle this. It's not going to be a problem. He's the kind of guy that just gets through all these things. I've never seen anything stop him, right? But little did they know how I felt. They said that I get through these things, but they didn't know how I felt. So I passed out 2 months ago or 3 months ago and split my head open. Okay. Split my head open. I'm in the hospital. I'm 78 years old. And a lot of people would say to me, my friends and peers, you know what, if anybody's going to get past this, Steve's going to get past it. He's going to be fine. But at 78 years old, compressed vertebrae, 2 cancers, I didn't know if I was going to get past it. That's just months ago. I didn't know if I was going to get past it. And there has been nights when I thought I was going to die, not only from the head injury, but from the cancers. I'm too tired. I can't do this. I can't concentrate. Who do I talk to? What do I do? So in the last year, which I never would have thought about ever before in my life, I sought counseling. And I went to a counselor and talked to her about how I felt, about things in general. And I went to her several times. I don't go anymore. She taught me a lot of things that I didn't know and reimagined and righted my life in a way that became, that became the norm. But everybody else thought, nah, he's going to be fine. Steve is going to be fine. And they didn't have any idea what I was thinking. No idea whatsoever. No idea whatsoever. So when people, even my own family, the other day my wife and daughter and granddaughter were here, and they wanted to go see a show at one of the casinos, and we did. We went to see the show, but by the end of the evening, I could barely walk, and I didn't have a cane. I was in excruciating pain, and they just kept on walking. Now, they weren't being mean to me. They just assumed that I would never get to a place where I couldn't walk, or I would never get to a place where I couldn't do something. And even though I had to sit down and tell them that I couldn't do something, even after that, they said, nah, just we're over here. It's just another 100 yards, et cetera, et cetera. And I was in excruciating pain. So what I felt and what people believed about me as it relates to how I can handle things, what they don't know is what's deep in my heart or deep in my mind. And you and the athletes that we had and other people that have come to me have over the years thanked me for my helping them. But there was a transference of thought as it related to the fact that Coach Miller's, he's never going to die. he's going to live forever. I mean, he's so solid. And part of my problem is I never wanted to show weakness, because I didn't want to show weakness, because I wanted the athletes to not show weakness. I wanted them to show strength. I wanted them to go outside of themselves and say, I can do this, even though no one thought I could, including myself. So is it tough? Yeah, it's damn tough. It's damn tough. But the only way you get through is through that skill set of practicing being calm, practicing leadership, practicing conversation, practicing whatever it is, and coming out of yourself. Because if I explained to everybody how I felt about those things, about the injury, about breaking my head, about passing out, about having 2 cancers, you don't hear me say that too often, if ever. I mean, because I don't want people to think I'm weak. And that's both a blessing and a curse at the same time. So, yeah, was it easy? No, it wasn't easy. But has it worked out well? Yeah, it's worked out spectacularly well. And I've become more than comfortable. But it was a trip. It was a journey. It wasn't just, open the door and Steve will walk through and it's all going to be okay. And most of that I held inside of me, because I didn't think that sharing it would do the people that I loved and cared about, would do them any good to know if I was suffering.